This meeting is being recorded.
Hi guys, I think you've gone onto mute again.
The cloud came along, not much has actually changed for the stack. The only real change was this. We suddenly took our stack that we had, which was all of this. We changed that it's not on-prem anymore, and we put it in Kubernetes, maybe in the cloud, maybe on-prem. And we changed the relationship between app server and app to one-to-one. And that's the only thing we changed, and we moved it to the cloud. So nothing changed in this layer here. So we changed to microservices. We now have a single app. We might deploy more often than 4 times a year now. And the startup time is obviously better because we only have 1 app starting up. But if we look at how the container landscape look like, and especially if you look at the cloud, and especially if you look at serverless, things like this, how much you use, whether it's memory, CPU, storage, this is what you pay for now. So this becomes important suddenly in the cloud. And if if your stack is using a lot of those without even running, your app hasn't started yet, just deploying your stack, you can do much more when you go to Node, and even more if you go to Go, because they are more efficient in utilizing these resources. And that's why Java is battling on the cloud. Because for the same real estate, I can maybe do 4 apps, pay the same price, but I can do much more when I switch to something else. So that brings us to the what? What is Quarkus? Quarkus is a stack for Java apps. It's open source. It's specifically created for cloud native, microservices, and serverless. This problem that I've just described is what Quarkus is solving. So in this picture, Quarkus changed to be much lighter here. We only have an optional VM, and then we have an optimized application framework and your app. And we'll get into what does that mean. But your stack can suddenly look like this. Now the startup time is instant, it's milliseconds. You can deploy all the time because it deploys so quickly. And if you look at the usage, which is one of the things we want to solve, memory usage for one, if we look at how we have moved the traditional apps to the cloud, this is typically what we will use. Or Quarkus will typically use this, sorry. Quarkus and OpenJDK will typically be this size. If you use Graal and go down to native, it will be this size. And if you compare it to what we think is cloud native now, which is your old, took your one-to-one relationship and put it in the cloud, it's quite a big difference. So suddenly, for one app that I used to do, I can now do 10 and pay the same price. And that's the same, doesn't matter what stack you use. So if you use REST and if you use CRUD, the pattern looks exactly the same. So now in this picture, suddenly we are a player. Java can suddenly start competing with Node and Go, because now I can use my real estate and I can deploy a whole bunch of Java applications. Another thing that is suddenly really important is startup time. And that is because the way in which we scale on the cloud is by starting up more applications. And if you look at serverless, we typically want to have the ability to scale to 0. And if a request comes in, I quickly scale up, start one app, serve the request, and scale down again. I can't do that if I take 4 seconds to start up, because then I've already timed out on the client side. But if you use Quarkus, you can actually start doing that. So you can actually start playing with serverless and scale to 0, which means you can deploy your app, scale to 0, pay nothing, and only start paying when the request comes in. The other thing that we are focusing on in Quarkus, and a lot of what I'm going to show today, is developer joy. And if you developed Java before, you know that in certain cases, when you do a deployment, you can stand up and go grab a coffee, have a chat, and come back and hope your deployment didn't fail, because that's how long it takes. So the time between making a code change and seeing that code change is really long, which makes it really hard to develop. So what we have is, Quarkus is based on standards, but we are not tied to standards. You can go outside of the standard if you want to. And we've unified all configurations, so it doesn't matter what extension you use, you configure them the same way. We have something which I'll show called dev services, where you have no config, but we'll start up what you need. So as an example, if you have a database you want to save stuff in the database, you basically just add the extension and the database will be spun up for you in a test container, configured, ready to go. You don't have to install a database, you don't have to install, start anything, we'll do it for you. That's databases, Kafka, we name it, we start it up for you. We do live reload, so no more starting an application. And one of the things that I hated the most when we kind of moved from deploying on an app server to deploying these fat jars was the fact that I have to always kill my fat jar, rebuild, and restart. That turnaround was worse than deploying onto an application server, which at least I can deploy live. We now have you start up your server once, and that's it. You start working, and it will figure out what needs to change on the class path, when it needs to restart, and because it can restart so quickly, we can actually restart. We have continuous testing. That basically comes from what happened here. It's because I'm now live coding, and when we do the demo, I'll get to showing that. You never restart, which means you never rebuild, which means your test cases never run. But what we now have is continuous testing. So you have continuous coding, and then in the background, if something changes, we'll make sure the test is run and notify you if you break something. A lot of the code has been streamlined, so I'll show some of that today. So you code really a little bit, but we fill in the blanks. And if you need to be special, then you can be special. I'll show some of that as well. And then if anybody has worked with Grohl before, you will know that it's not easy to just take an app, take Grohl and compile it to native. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you. And I'll show that as well. The other thing that we do is you can be reactive or not reactive. That's your choice. And you can mix the two. So whether or not you are writing blocking code like we traditionally did, or you want to move to non-blocking, both of those options are the same and they look the same. They look and feel the same. And I'll show some of that as well. Best of breed frameworks and standards. So we haven't reinvented the wheel. We didn't build something from scratch. We took all the stuff that you already know, and we just made sure that it can work in this new world of clouds and microservices. So if you've been working in the Java EE space, most of those libraries are still underneath here. If you've used MicroProfile, that's still there. If you used Camel, Hibernate, the rest is reactive. Even Spring, we support Spring. I'll show some of that, not in the code, but I'll just show you what we support. Right, so now we want to get to how do we do it. So I'm going to go through the slide first, and then we're going to do the demo, and hopefully you'll see how we do it as well. But if you look at how traditionally a framework starts, you have some build process, Maven or Gradle, or hopefully not Ant, but something that compiles your code into something that is deployable. And then when your application starts up, the first thing the application does is it reads your config files. That could be from the file system, XML, JSON, YAML, whatever. It scans the class path for annotations. So annotation-based programming is really nice from a programming point of view, but the application needs to scan these annotations and understand what you've done. It needs to then build up a model of all of the annotations that you've scanned. And then it needs to start certain things, the thread tools and so on. And that's why we take 4 seconds to start up, because there's quite a lot that needs to happen when an application actually starts. And it didn't matter up until now. What Quarkus does is it takes this line and it moves it to here, which means we do all of this in build time, which is why we can deploy in milliseconds. So what does that mean? Once you start up your application, there's no more need to access a file, to read a file, to parse a file, because we do that at deploy time. We do no annotation scanning at deploy time. So if your application start up, we've already scanned all the annotations and we've already built the model. And we've recorded what is going to happen. Even stuff that we couldn't do here, we record, bytecode recording, and we just replay it when it starts up. So suddenly your application can start up in milliseconds. This is kind of how Quarkus looks like on an architecture level. Jandex is a library that can scan annotations. So during build time, we use Jandex, all these extensions use Jandex to scan the annotations and understand what needs to happen. Gizmo does byte recording. We use Graal if we need to get down to a native image. Arc is a dependency injection, so normal injection. And then on top of that sits all these extensions. And the reason why the extensions is important is the extension does the work to say, what can I do at build time and record so that I work better and runtime? Which means you can still import a library. Maybe you like library X, you use it to do something. You can still do that. And your Quarkus app will still work, but you won't have the optimization. Where if you use an extension, so let's say REST Easy, you can go and use REST Easy like you traditionally use it, including your POM REST Easy, and it will work. But then you do the scanning at deploy time. If you use the extension will pull in REST Easy. It will do all the things that it does in build time. It will take out stuff that it don't need anymore, because if you think of REST Easy, how many code in this library is written just to read a configuration or just to scan an annotation, which you don't need at runtime anymore. So we can actually discard that class, throw it away, and make your deployable unit smaller. So how it actually looks like is more something like this. We have two sides for everything. We have the deployment side. And if you go look at how our extension look like, we have a multi-module deployment and a runtime for each of these. So this does all the work, and this just has the recorded code in and the runtime that you need to run. So optimized. Cool, let's get to the demo. So I couldn't get my screen to work properly, so I'm going to basically code off that screen, so it might be interesting. I couldn't get to mirror my screen. What I wanted to show first was code.quarkus, which is this one here. So if you go to code.quarkus.io, let's see if I can zoom it a bit. You can generate your starter application. So you just select whatever you want. So that's what I've done in our application. So I went and changed the name. I changed to Java 17, and I selected some of the extensions. So the one that we're going to start with was, I think I selected REST Easy Jackson, SmallRye Open API, and I think that's actually it. So that's enough to start a REST endpoint. But just so that you can see, there's quite a few extensions for you to choose. And apart from the ones that you see here, the other thing that I wanted to show you is that you can also go and see what is in the Quarkus hub, which is this is big enough. So if you go here and you go to repositories, you'll see there's a bunch of other ones, which is more outside of the core of Quarkus, but there's quite a lot in here. This one, for instance, it's a new one, helps front-end development. So it brings the node world to Quarkus. So you don't have to do npm something. You do everything in Quarkus. So specifically, if you want to build micro front-ends or a front-end, then you can look at something like this. I'm involved in another one here called logging. So I maintain this extension as well in Quarkus. This extension you can add to your application, and then you can go to Q Logging Manager UI, and you get a UI for your log file, which you can secure, but it's just an easy way to see your log, change the log levels, and filter it out. The other thing that I wanted to show was the guides. So this is the guides. You'll find a guide for every extension that we have in here. So if you are starting to play with this and you want to understand how something works, these guides are pretty good. You should be able to find what you want there. Okay. So what we're going to do, if time allows us, is create the starter app, which I've already done with code.quarkus. We'll then start modifying it to be more than just hello world, and we'll add this to-do element, right? Then we'll start adding testing to it so that I can show you continuous testing. I'll show you the dev UI. The other thing that you get out of the box when you start in this dev mode is this UI that helps you with all sorts of things. I'll show you that. Then we'll start expanding the to-do to be able to add a new to-do to your database, well, to your system, and then we'll add a database. And then we'll secure it. And I'll change it to non-blocking at the end, just to show non-blocking. And then we'll take it to production. So we'll see if that works. But basically, either Docker and then deploy to Kubernetes. And we're going to do all of this while the system is up and running. I'm not going to, hopefully not going to restart the system once. So you can see that the live. Is there any questions before I get into the coding? Nothing.
By the way, keep the questions coming. Keep it interactive because there are prizes there. So the more active you are,
there's a question.
Is the generation of the new project, is there like a command line tool that I can install locally for that, or do I need to have access to the website to be able to go and generate that new
Project? That's a good question, and deserves a t-shirt. Yeah, so I've showed code.quarkus.io. You can use Maven, normal way to do Maven. We also have a command line interface. So if you install that on your machine, you can do Quarkus, something. Yeah, so there's multiple, and that can work offline. So there's multiple options. I usually just do it by hand. Maybe I'm old school, but yeah, a lot of people love the CLI. Yeah. Any more questions? There's two more t-shirts. Yeah.
Especially on the extension part, this support the extension is a bit hard, which is talking to enterprise customers. So
yeah.
Is there a resource to more like extensions at which level?
Yeah. There's a few. The easiest way to do it is just to go here somewhere. Let me just see. Maybe not. There was a redhat.co.quarkus. I always thought there was a link here, but there's a version of this for Red Hat supported build, which is always a bit behind because it gets hardened and tested on multiple architectures. And then every extension here will also, like this one is experimental, for instance, which probably then wouldn't be in the Quarkus one. But if you go to, I think it's just redhat.co.quarkus.io. You'll get the Red Hat version of this with the supported Red Hat ones. And it might be documented somewhere as well. Does that answer your question? Okay.
One question.
One t-shirt.
One t-shirt.
How easy it is kind of to write the own extension, I guess? For instance, if there's no extension for some library that have it kind of optimized.
It's not something you want to do every day. When I got into the Quarkus team and I maintain a few extensions, it's something to get your head around, especially the fact that you code for things that's going to happen in the future. So the whole recording of things, and certain things can't happen, so you restructure the code. So it's not impossible. It's not something that I would give the junior dev to do. But a lot of extensions exist, and the Quarkus ones is a lot of the times maintained by outside of Red Hat, community members. So if you have something, you can pop it in Quarkus. Probably get somebody else that also wants it. Like SOAP, for instance, is supported in there. Some people still use SOAP.
Mm.
So there's a Quarkus SOAP extension. You'll probably get some help there. You maintain it there. And then there might be stuff that you want to do for your company specific. If your company is doing stuff that you can't open source, then you know, it's not something you're going to do every day. You know, it might be the odd person here and there that needs that. But yeah, it's easier to write business code with Quarkus than to write the extension. You also don't get any of the benefits, hot reloading, continuous testing. None of that you have when you write an extension because you are writing Quarkus. You don't have the Quarkus benefits. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, the t-shirt is finished. There's still a cap, socks, and some other small things left. Okay. So I went on here. I selected Rest Easy, and then I keep on looking here. I need to look here. I downloaded the application, and what I get, I'll zoom now, is you'll see some of them, it says starter code. So it'll generate some example code for me. So I got this, right? So basic, if you know REST, basic REST endpoint under /hello, that will say hello from REST Easy Reactive. So now I'm at the wrong, sorry. I'll zoom just now. Okay. So I'm going to basically say Maven clean install and then Quarkus dev. So I haven't coded anything yet. I just downloaded the code and I'm starting my project up. Once this is started, I shouldn't have to restart this again. It will keep running and it'll keep updating. You also got a test. So while this start up, so part of what we got from the download is a test. Right, it's quite easy to do a Quarkus test @ Quarkus test and your actual test. Right, fairly simple. You also get Docker file images. That is kind of normal defaults. You can obviously add your own as well. And you get one for the JVM mode and one for the native mode. You get a starter page, which you can delete. I'll show it, but it's just an HTML page that says, hey, here's your Quarkus app. You'll typically delete that, I assume. And then you'll do all your config in applications.properties. You don't get this import SQL. That's something that's part of my demo that I added in. Right, so we started the application, and you can already see the log is a bit different than a normal log because I have this at the bottom here. So this allows me to interact with my running applications, and I can force certain things. So I can, if I do H, it should show me what I can do. So continuous testing, I'll show a bit later, but basically you can stop and start the continuous testing. You can open the exception in your IDE. Yeah, all sorts of things. One of the things that you can do is you can press D, and that should open in your browser your dev UI. Let me see if I can zoom this a bit. Right, so this you get if you start your application in dev mode, you get this. You don't get this when you build your final artifact that you're going to move to production, obviously, but this is for dev mode. Now, what this is depending on the extensions that you have installed, it will show tiles here because every extension can contribute to dev UI. It's an easy way to get to the config. So if I click there, I go directly to the config of that specific extension. This one configuration, for instance, has a config editor. So if I go in here, this is all the config, and you can change it, and it will take effect immediately. This is a bit overwhelming, so you can also click on this one, which will take you to the config, but narrow it down to the config for that extension. Right, you can see what beans you have, and more specifically, which ones we've removed, because sometimes we've removed something that you didn't want us to remove in our optimization. and then you can handle that in certain ways. But the point is, this gives you as a developer an insight into the running application. I've used REST Easy Reactive. One of the things that we have is a way to tell you how reactive you are. In my case, I'm 66% because I still have a blocking endpoint. And once I change it to non-blocking a bit later, you'll see how this becomes 100%. The other thing, because I installed OpenAPI, I get Swagger out of the box and obviously also OpenAPI. Right, so there's my Hello resource, and I can now go and try it out. And you'll see that all of this has been generated for you. You didn't have to put any special annotations. So that's that 80-20 rule where we do most of the work. Even security will put the OpenAPI stuff in for you. You can fine tune it if you want to, but yeah, we'll do most of it. Right, so we can test this out. We can say hello from REST Easy Reactive. Right. More shits. More questions. Okay, so next what we want to do is we want to modify this to be a more interesting application. Right, so what we'll do is we'll take this and we'll just make a copy of it and then call it to-do resource. Okay, and now we're going to start modifying this a bit. So the first thing we want to do, obviously, is to change this to be to-do. I'm just going to do this because I'm lazy. And then, so I'll remove that for now. So then we just want to say, let's get a list of to-dos. It's quite interesting to code like this. Okay, we don't have a to-do object yet, so we'll go and create a to-do object. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here as well. Sorry, I'll zoom just now. So this is a plain old Pojo. We'll do database a bit later. So let's remove this. So I didn't do getters and setters because I'm too lazy. So for now, it's just public fields. You can obviously do getters and setters. You can even do records if you want to. That's already supported. Right, and then here we can then say list to-dos. We will return a list of to-dos like this. Okay, so we'll just return a list of to-do. Okay, so we don't have a database yet, but we at least have an object that we return now. So let's go see how that looks like. So we can just go here, refresh this. And now it's there. So I didn't have to compile, or I didn't have to stop my previous application, build a new jar, start a new jar. It just pops up here.
How does the war swap work?
Sorry?
How does the war swap work?
I don't know. It's a combination of class path manipulation, if it can be done. So the core of Quarkus detect whether or not it can just do a class path manipulation. And if it can't, it will do a restart. And again, because it restarts so quickly, you wouldn't notice.
So how do you compile that? So it's
On the fly, yeah.
on the fly.
Yeah. So this one, for instance, didn't have to restart because it was just new code that I added to my class path. If I go and add a new extension, I have to restart to kind of get that extension's build going. Or if I change a property, it might sometimes result in a restart.
You've got a DCVM connectivity where it can also detect something like JRebel.
Yeah, so this is similar to JRebel. I can't give you the integrated details of how it happens. I actually know Quarkus very general. I focus on, my responsibility is Open API and GraphQL. So there I can go into detail if anybody has got GraphQL questions. But yeah, I can't tell you more than this. But this one, for instance, we just manipulated. Right, so back here, we can try it out. And we should get back this in a JSON. And you'll notice that I don't think I have even JSON as a consume, right? So again, it's one of those where we know that the 80% of the use cases you would want JSON. So we take this list and this to do and make sure that it becomes JSON when we marshal. You can change that, of course, but for the default, it's there. Okay, so let's add a test for this. So the first thing that I want to show is let's start up testing. So I'll say R, and now I start my continuous testing. So what's happening in the background is there's two environments running on your machine now. One does your dev UI and manipulate the class path and make sure that stays in sync, and another one tests, and it continuously tests, and it knows, depending on the changes that you've made, which tests it needs to run. So it won't run all the tests all the time. If you have 100 tests and you've changed something and 2 tests is affected, it will rerun those 2. So you can see already I have 1 test and it passed, so we're all green. And if I make a change to my code, so that one test is this one here. So if I break the test, sorry, so let's break it and I save and I go back here, then it already ran the test and it told me that it's broken, right? And let me fix it quickly. And that goes for either a change in your code or change in the test. In both cases, it will detect that it should rerun and what it should rerun. So it continues to rerun in the background. What you also have in Dev UI, if we go back to Dev UI, you'll see here at the bottom, it's now green. Previously, it was orange because the tests weren't running. You can open this log file. So this is a log file that streams. It's very similar to that Quarkus extension that I've shown you. So it'll just stream your log. You can change the log level. You can filter your log, so on. And then you can also see your changes here. So again, if I go and break the code, I'll add that in there and save, and go back here, and then it's broken there, and it shows you there 1 test failed. You can also go into the details of this, so you can click there, and now this will list all your tests. So you can keep this open in one screen, the code, and you'll just see if something goes red, you just broke it. You can also see details of this test. So you can see what exactly broke it and fix it, obviously. And then again, if I go in here and I fix it and Control S and go back there, then it should go green or not. It should actually happen automatically. There's a WebSocket connection that kind of keeps this open, but there it's green again. So, so this is continuous testing. Let's add a test for our to-do. So we want to here do this and this. Right. So this should fail because I don't have a test that says prepare demo. I don't have it to do that does that. Why is it? Oh. Sorry. That's really difficult to code on that screen. Okay, so if I save here, we should now get a failing test. Oh, this thing isn't working properly. Right, so let's actually see why this isn't working.
It's not running.
Yeah, it says it's not running, but it's, yeah, maybe it isn't running. So if I go here, now in fact it should pass because I hard coded that test in. Yeah, I hard coded that value in, so my test should actually pass. So if we go back here and see why the test isn't running, or okay, so both tests are passing. So this is kind of how you code. You just add your test, add your code, never restarts, and it just shows you the green all the time. Okay, so next we want to actually now add a to-do ourselves. I'm not hard coded, so we need a database so that we can store this to-do. So what we can do is in our POM file or with command line, if you prefer that, we're going to just add 2 extensions. So I've previously added them and just so that this is easier, but you'll add these 2. So the one is adding a PostgreSQL driver, and the other one is Hibernate Panache. So I'm sure most of you know Hibernate, because that's kind of the default JPA implementation, the default way in which we do object relational mapping. Panache is built on top of Hibernate to just give you the common patterns in which you typically do this, and I'll show that now. It's just making it so much easier to work with data. So if I add these 2 and I click save, you'll see in the log that it should restart now. And now you can see it's starting up Docker. That should pop up here. I think I've already missed it. So we're already up and running, and somewhere here, it should have started Docker. I don't know why I can't see it in the log, but we can see it in dev UI. So now if I go to dev UI and I refresh here, you can first of all see that there's a new extension, the data source one, right, and the ORM one. So you can again do certain things with that. You can see what persistence we don't have any yet because we haven't coded any. But here's the interesting part. In the background, we've started up a Docker container for you. You said that you wanted to use Postgres. We started up Postgres for you, and we've configured it. So we have the configuration for you in. So you don't have to do any configuration, don't have to install anything, and you have a database that you can code against. Right, so let's save something in that database.
Do you have to have Postgres installed?
No, you just need Docker. And I don't use Docker, I have Podman. So either Podman or Docker. Obviously, mine was previously downloaded, which is why it's so quick. So for the first time, it might take long because it needs to go to Docker up or Quay or one of those and download the image for you and start it. And you can override the default values. If you want a specific version of Postgres, you can set a property and then we'll use that, right? But we work again, 80%, 20% of it. So it should work for most cases, but you can fine tune it.
So it screens up a Docker container for you?
Yeah, in test containers. So there's a Docker container running with a database and it's configured, right? So I can just start saving stuff in it. So I will go back here. I will go back here. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to start making this an entity. So we'll change this. And this is the important part here, is that I extend Panache entity and not this one, probably this one. Right, so let me just do this. We'll get to this in a bit. Right, so now my to-do, that same object that we created earlier, I've just marked it as entity, which is plain JPA, and I extend Panache entity. And this object now has the ability to assist to the database or read from the database or update itself and so on. So if I go here now, what we want to do here is we don't want to hard code it anymore. So we want to do probably this. Yeah, without the uni, I'll get to that. So now I can do to-do.list all. Right, I have a whole bunch of methods on to do, static methods that I can count, I can delete, I can find, I can do all sorts of database operations, none of which I have to code. Right, so that should return them. And then we want to add a new to-do, have the ability to add a new to-do. So we'll do this, we'll do the security a bit later. Right, so we'll just say that on a post, we want to, in a transaction, we want to have the ability to store a new to-do. Right, and again, I have methods here to make it easy. So I take the instance that came in. So this is JSON coming in. Again, I didn't have to tell the rest that it uses JSON. That's the default. If I wanted to use XML, I say add consumes application type XML, and this would be XML coming in. But this is a JSON object. We bind it to the POJO, and then because of panache, you can just do persistent flush, and it will store it in the database. So now my test should actually fail because I've removed my hard-coded values. So what you can do is you can say, let's add this file called import.sql, and this will then create some test data for you. And there I add some test data. I've just added the one, but now I'm back to normal. So my hard-coded value is now replaced with this. So the application will put this in the database, and I should be able to just test that. So if we go back here, this seems fine. And let's go to Swagger again. Let's double check. Oh, maybe it's not fine because I haven't saved. Okay, so let's see if we can, if this worked. Yeah. So this is now retrieving this value from the database. I haven't restarted my app. I haven't installed anything. I'm just coding. So what do we want to do next? We probably want to secure these endpoints. So what we can do, first of all, is we pull in, there's a few models in Quarkus. The one that I like the most is OpenID Connect, which is this one here, OIDC. And again, because we have dev services, what will happen now when I do this and I click save and we go here, it will get an error. That's not what I wanted. Saved. Let me just think, why is that the case? It might just be, it might actually be fine. Let's just do this. Yeah, it's fine. So now it pulled in a new dev service called Keycloak. I don't know if you know Keycloak. Anybody knows Keycloak? So it's just a, it's also open source. You can install it and it just allows you to do user management, user access and authentication management. So if I go back here to my dev UI, I should now have two of these. No? Security, OpenID Connect. Why did that not work? Okay, I didn't want to do this, but I'm actually restarting the app because I don't know why this didn't happen. Typically, it will just pull in when you do it like it at the database and just pull in the Keycloak. We'll see now if it pulls it in. Yeah, so this shouldn't be up yet. Oh, wait a minute. What's this? Close this one. Okay, this doesn't look right.
Demo does.
Yeah, exactly. This worked perfectly. Yeah, so now it started Keycloak there. So typically this would have happened when you just add that, but it is starting Keycloak. And the interesting thing about Keycloak and a lot of other open source projects that Red Hat sponsors is that these projects, so we've built Quarkus not only for end users to migrate from JBoss to the cloud in Quarkus, we build it for ourselves as well. A lot of the Opta Planner, you name any product in Red Hat that's currently using Wildflower JBoss is being re-platformed onto Quarkus. So we eat our own dog food, and Keycloak is one of them. So Keycloak 18 now default will be based on Quarkus, because it means that now you can use Keycloak in the cloud and save money. Right. So let's see if this works better. So now I should have two, right? So there's my Keycloak. Again, pulled an image for me by default and configured it by default. So I've got Keycloak up and running. So let's use it. So now I can go back here, go to my to-do resource. And let's say that if you want to add a to-do, you have to be well, we actually want to make that admin, I guess. Admin. And if you want to view it, you have to be a user, just to show the two levels. Right, so now if I go back here and I go back to Swagger UI, you can see that this popped up. Again, automatic. You don't have to write code to make it happen. We've set it. We see that you've added the OpenID Connect, and we set everything correct. And I can see that these two are, need security. So I shouldn't be able to do this. Right. So I get an unauthorized error back. All documented as well. Right. So it's documented here that this is what you can expect. Either 200, 401 or 403.
Was that annotation the only thing you added to the code? So there was no
nothing else. Nothing else. So the only thing that I've added was roles allowed. And then we say, oh, you've got a REST endpoint, you've got Open API. This is probably what you want. You can change this. If you don't like the defaults, you can go and say, actually, I want my 401 to say, go away or something, whatever. But we give you the default. So now we want to test that the security is actually working. So if you go back here, you'll see that because I've added Keycloak, I now have this new tile here. And we support other providers, by the way. Keycloak is just kind of the default again. So now I can go to Keycloak. This is my Keycloak started up by dev services. I can go to the admin if I really want to change anything, but the defaults is good enough for me. Right, so I can just say, let me log in. And we'll log in with this, always two users. Again, you can configure this. By default, there's two, Bob and Alice. Bob. So Bob is a user. So now if you logged in, we'll show you the token. So this is the encrypted JWT token. And that's the decrypted side. And then I can see, okay, Bob is part of the user group, right? We also see that you have a Swagger. So we'll add this link here. If you have anything else, like I've mentioned, I work on GraphQL. If you use GraphQL, there'll be a link to say, and you can test your GraphQL secure here. So now I can go directly to Swagger logged in. So now I'm logged in. Yeah. And now I can test. So Bob should be able to do this. So Bob can, no? Why can't Bob do this? Try this out. Bob shouldn't be able to do this. Or did I screw up my, let me just quickly see. He can't add, but he should. Is it users?
And the user is in singular rather than plural?
No, I had a user. Yeah. let's just double check what Bob is. Again, this worked perfectly. So let's just go in here. So Bob is still logged in, so I should just re-type my password. No, it is single, so it should work.
I think you have users.
No, I changed it. Yeah, I changed it. So Bob should be able to do this.
Maybe
No.
user stuff.
Still not. Huh?
It worked, yeah. Correct.
Why can't I? Oh, there we go. Sorry, it worked. I'm not sure why. I wonder if it was maybe a browser cache or something. Typically, this works usually the first time. But what Bob can't do is add a user. So obviously, if I go here and here and try this out, and we don't need this and we don't need that. That's two defaults. We'll just leave it like this. It doesn't really matter because it's not going to work anyway. So now I should get a forbidden. So it's not that I'm not authorized. It's just that I'm not allowed to do it. So 403. I can then obviously go back and log in as Alice, and Alice is admin rights, and Alice will be able to add. I'll skip that part because we're running out of time. So that's security. So very easy. I've added security, secured my endpoints with a proper key cloak with a JWT token that gets passed along. So the last thing before we go to productions, we want to make this reactive. So what we have in Quarkus, we support a few reactive frameworks, but the one that we promote is called Mutiny. It's under the SmallRye projects. There's a project called Mutiny. And Mutiny just gives you a really easy way to do reactive. Has anybody looked at Mutiny? No. So what we'll do is we'll go here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure, because the thing about reactive is that you can't block a thread. That's what reactive is. So if I say that my REST endpoint is a non-blocking endpoint, and I get to a database which is a blocking driver, then it will just tell me, hey, you cannot do this. So the first thing that we need to do is change, where's my database? So we want to change these two so that they are the reactive ones. So I'm just going to copy and paste because it's just exactly the same as this, except the reactive version of it. And now I need to extend the reactive Panache entity. So that should fix this one. And here, because now this that I get for free, this method, now returns a uni. So uni is a streaming of ports. It's an object that says that I will execute on the event loop. So I need to just change my method signature to make sure that I also return a uni. So I'll just do, in fact, I can just do this. Yep, and let's see.
Is there that reactive extension only for the PostgreSQL or for other database as well?
I think, I'm not sure if it's all of them. I think it's most of them. The Oracle one, I'm not too sure about. But for most of the others, they are the React. That actually comes from Vertex. Because all of Quarkus is kind of Vertex under the covers, just made easy. Because, yeah, Vertex is a bit of a different beast. So I'll just do this quickly. SmallRye, Mutiny, no, and uni. So that's it. So I've taken my normal application and made it reactive by those few changes. And we can see if this still works by going here and here. If you really want to see, because there's no difference in what you're going to see, but you can print out the thread. So you can say thread.get current thread, get the thread name, and you'll see that the one prints out worker thread and the other one will print out event loop. So anyway, this should still work. And what we've done with blocking and non-blocking is that basically, if you do list to do without the uni, we will assume that you want blocking. If you did uni, then we assume you want non-blocking. If you do list to do, but you add an annotation called at non-blocking, then we'll do non-blocking. If you add blocking on here now, at blocking, then it will block. And this is true for your REST endpoints, your GraphQL endpoints, your gRPC endpoints. Any of the API layers conforms to that rule. Right, but the easiest is just to do this, right? Uni, just wrap it in a uni. So now we have a reactive application that is secure, that stores to the database. The next thing that we want to do is probably take this to production. So let's see if that works. Okay. So actually,
take a deep breath now.
yes, actually, I wanted to show something before I did. Maybe say a prayer or so. Yeah, I actually only got this working this morning. Because, like I said, I'm actually, Quarkus is too big to know the whole of Quarkus. So I focus on specific extensions, and then I know I kind of generalize over the rest. And then when I said what I'll talk about, I thought, okay, let's deploy it to Kubernetes. That should be quite interesting. And then it ended up being taking quite a lot of my time. But it is working. It should be working. I think it's all fine. I don't know why we hang here, because we previously also hang here. I restarted now because I wanted to show you something. Basically, what we need to do is, because Quarkus took care of a lot of stuff for you. It's installed the database, and installed Keycloak, and it configured those. You're not going to have that when you move to production. You're not going to do that for you in production. You need to own your own database and own Keycloak in production, which means you need to configure them as well. So what we want to do is we want to just help you configure the stuff that we've automatically configured for you. So what you have here is an application that's still starting up. Oh, you know what? I might need something else as well. Yeah, I need this as well anyway. But this is what I wanted to show you. So this is not typically something that you would, let me zoom a bit. This is not typically something that you would do in production, but just for demo, I said actually load this script in production as well. Typically, it will only run in your test environment and in your dev environment. And then I also do a drop and create, which you'll typically also won't do in production. So don't do those two. Right, but the other ones, these are all the magic ones that we set for you. Now, previously, this would have been empty because we would set it in the core. But what you can do is you can go to DevUI.
You don't have separate files for core and stuff.
No, you can if you want to set it up like that. But what we do is we prefix it. So if you do %prod dot the property name, this only applies to prod. The same goes for dev and the same goes for test. So you can set things for specific profiles. But so this would have been empty up until now and ignored anyway, because the dev mode will ignore %prod. But what you can do is what you want now is you want to basically have these configs in your config file. You'll see if you go to the config editor as well. So if you look at it in the config editor, the ones with the little magic wand is the ones that we've set for you. So we'll tell you this is what we've done, just to keep you in the loop. What you can do if you get here, you can go here to dev services, and then you just say copy to test or copy to prod, and then we'll dump what we've done in the log file, and then you'll just go and modify it. You can actually just modify it right here if you want to. Right, so we'll dump what we have, and then you just modify it and you're ready to go for production.
Is that a custom server written or it's on top of Tomcat or Jetty?
The dev UI
Yeah.
runs on top of Vertex.
What is it?
Yeah, so we start a small Vertex separate from the Vertex that your app uses, because the REST and GraphQL and gRPC and anything else, HTTP is also Vertex. We start a kind of walled garden one for dev services, which we remove when you build production, because you don't want any of this in
So we have
production.
got images directly which we can use for Quarkus, which has everything underlined. So in terms of containerization for the app,
For the app,
you have the image with this stuff.
yeah, you don't need. So what we'll do is when you build the image and when you build Quarkus, we will only use what you've used. So we don't pull in the whole of Quarkus. It's not like an old app server where you have everything and you use this little bit. If you use this little bit, this is how big the deployable unit is that we built. I'll show it just now. Yeah, yeah, Yeah.
Deserves a t-shirt.
yeah. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, you go. Okay, so I'm stopping my dev mode now. I just wanted to show you the. I just wanted to show you the way in which you can get the configuration over. Right, so the first thing that I need to do is obviously I need to start a database. So just to make it easy, I have a small startup script that should be something like start database. So I'm just manually starting a Docker container up, which contains my database now. Typically in a production environment, you would have it probably running somewhere on some other server managed by some other people. Right, and and now I should just do a new tab. Right, so now I'll just do maven clean install just to build it again, even though I think the one that's built should be okay. So now I'm building like we used to build. This you don't do often. You don't do it when you develop. You do this typically in a CI environment. So your continuous integration server will build your artifact and move it to where it needs to move. I should have done skip tests. And then I'm not going to show it because it takes quite a while. But if you want to build the native image, you do maven clean install -p native. And then we will build the native image for you. It takes a while because it then spins up Graal. If you don't have Graal installed, we have a Docker image that we pull and we do everything in Docker. What I have now is an application that I should be able to start. So target Quarkus app. Oh, let me zoom, sorry. You can't see there, can you? Quarkus app and then Quarkus run. Now, keep in mind that we kept the creation of the test data in so that we have test data to show. But we started up now in, where's the, yeah, 2 seconds, right? And that includes actually also adding test data in the database. So this is pretty fast for a application that contains a database as well. But I'll show you a faster one just now. But let's just see if this works. So localhost 8080 / we can just do the hello for now. So that still works. And I think it was to do. And there's my one that we've entered. So this is a production application now, Java -jar. So it's running on the VM. I can very easily make this a Docker container as well. There's a lot of documentation on that to do that as well. I'll rather show you the OpenShift one now. But what I want to show is the native compilation. So like I said, what you'll do is you'll do maven clean install -p native like that. And it will take a while to build. Again, this is typically something you'll probably do in your CI. I've done that already just to save time. So if we go to native, it will build something like this. And then it starts up like this. Again, added stuff to the database. So now you can see why you can suddenly take part in serverless, because your application can start like this. Yeah. And we can test it again, just to make sure I'm not lying. It's still working. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to show, I know we've probably over time, but we want to quickly deploy this to Kubernetes. So what I've done is I've installed, this is the part that I'm not sure if it's going to work. so what I've done, I've done this earlier, so you can see that it did work at some point. I'm going to delete this now and we'll retry this. Just to show you how easy it is to do. Now, okay, while that deletes. So what you've seen there is a local OpenShift. It's kind of like Minikube, but for OpenShift. It is, I have it open here somewhere. It's called Code Ready CRC, Code Ready Containers. Very easy to install on your local machine. You do CRC config, CRC start, and you have a full-blown Kubernetes on your machine. Right, so just out of interest. You can do the same with Minikube. It's the same kind of idea, or Rancher or whatever, any of these are pretty much Kubernetes based. You can also, in the guides, if you go under cloud, you'll see deploying Quarkus to Kubernetes, deploying to OpenShift. It's all the, if you want to start going to the public clouds, the Google, Amazon, Azure, all of them is there. If you want to do serverless, it's all documented there, and it's all being made as easy as all the stuff that I've shown you now. What we're going to do is we're going to add OpenShift. So basically, I'm going to add this because nobody likes YAML. So this will generate my YAML deployment descriptors for me. If I want, if I want to do it as on Kubernetes, then I can do this. If I want this on Minikube, then I can do this. I do pretty much the same thing.
This question have you installed any plugin the editor to notify Quarkus to build in the background, or how is that configured?
Just say again.
How is that? Is it configured with the IDE to on save to detect the changes in the background, or
no?
No,
so you can go to Notepad.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. No, it's got nothing to do. I'm actually the only one in the team that uses NetBeans, because apparently nobody uses NetBeans anymore. So most of our team uses IntelliJ or Eclipse. Yeah, I think I'm the only one in the team using NetBeans. Okay, so I've added that. So the next thing that I want to do, so I installed local OpenShift on my machine. I've configured it. It's up and running already. Once you on that, you can, let me just show you. So if I'm here, you can go here and then you can get the login command. And then I've logged in, I've already done that. So I'm logged in into my local Kubernetes, right? But it's something like OC login, some token, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm basically going to do this. So here. Paste this here and get an error because I'm in the wrong directory. Yep. Yeah. So the only thing that I do now is I'm basically just saying deploy it for me, please. That's it. So it will take a while. What it will also do is it will generate, like I said, it will generate the YAML that you need, which nobody wants to really do. So I can show that as well. So we want to be somewhere in here. So this will pop up once we get there. Oh, I don't know why it hangs on this test. I should just skip tests. Again, it didn't hang previously. Yeah, so it's running our tests, all good. So there we go, select the target OpenShift. So now it starts doing the OpenShift stuff. So we should already here have a folder called Kubernetes. And there's my YAML generated for me. I don't have to care about YAML, which is brilliant because YAML sucks. And as I said, the same goes for Kubernetes, Minikube, or OpenShift, and probably others as well. I don't know this part of Quarkus that well. So at some point, this should seems like it's already there. So there's my application now running inside Kubernetes, and okay, it's still starting up. Let's see. And obviously we want to now do hello. And to-dos won't work because I don't have a database. But typically you would also have a database in your Kubernetes environment. And that's my demo. Any questions? Yeah, T-shirt.
Is it a programming model which you would say is more suited for saving style than the reactive style? And the reason I asked this question is because you said Quarkus was built with cloud and serverless, and so I'm thinking about efficiency on the cloud. Yeah, and the reason that some of the greedy applications would take more resources. Yeah.
Like you've hopefully seen, is that what we try to do is we make it so easy to move to the reactive because your model is the same, the way in which your code is the same. It's actually very easy. However, you can still write code if that's what you want. Under the covers, the engine itself does a lot of reactive stuff. So if you use, for instance, REST Easy Reactive, you can go and use REST Easy. There's an extension for that. It will be slow blocking code if you use the classic one versus the reactive, because even though we block your piece of code, underneath we do things more. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it's going to be your choice. I'm not even myself yet in the reactive mindset because it is a bit of a mindset change. But we are trying to make it easy.
You see me people use it more in the true serverless world, like it's a functions service environment as well.
Yeah. And I don't know that part well either, but if we go here, somewhere here, you'll see all our extensions for it. So there's Amazon Lambda, there's Azure Functions. We even have this extension called Funky, which is trying to give you a programming model that is removed from the underlying serverless. So you can code in that, and then you can say, okay, after I've coded, where do I want to deploy it? Because all the others, you tie yourself into that cloud, which is what the cloud wants, but might not be what you want. Yeah, even Heroku, there's all of that. Amazon, it's all there with the guides and a T-shirt. Oh, you've got okay. Question.
How do I introduce Quarkus to an existing monolith, maybe a Spring MVC? Is it possible? Any tips?
Yeah, so let's talk about Spring. So obviously Spring is probably the most popular programming model currently out there. They themselves are working towards Spring Native. They're still far behind in terms of being as quick as we are. They don't have the developer joy that I hope that you've seen now. But what we have as well is that, let's go here and let's go, it's not web, is not data. Somewhere here is a whole section, as far as I remember. Messaging. Cloud, sorry. I probably can filter this somehow to get it easier. Civilization. Yeah. So you can do Spring Cache, Spring Boot properties, JPA. Most of the Spring stuff you can program like you used to program. We don't pull in any Spring library. We just scan the annotations, scan the configs, and create the same bytecode as what you would have had with JAX-RS. So if you prefer the Spring programming model, you can still do that. So if you are currently a Spring user and you're building monoliths, you should be able to fairly easily go. You might find as you get introduced to the non-Spring stuff that it's actually easier. And a lot of people that's done this actually made the switch just because we focus on that part. But yeah, we definitely support Spring and we add to this quite a lot. I've got more t-shirts. Who wants to ask questions?
Question about thank you. About reflection. So if the application code does access reflection via reflection API, how does it work under Quarkus?
So if I look at the extensions that I work on, GraphQL and the same for OpenAPI. We use a lot of, in GraphQL, for instance, you just code a method and you say, this should be a GraphQL query. Under the covers, we scan that annotation and with reflection, we call that method because somewhere a request comes in and we need to marry it up with the one that you've annotated. But because the extension knows that, when we build, during the build time, if I go and show you the code for the GraphQL extension, there's code that says, go find all of these, take note of the classes and register them in Graal for reflection. So we just do it for you. If you are doing it, it will still work in JVM mode. In Graal, it might not. But you have the option to just annotate with an annotation to say that this should be, take note of this so that you do this, or with config.
Okay, so you can instruct Quarkus to actually take note of that and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions?
Anyone for socks?
Yeah, there's socks, there's a hat.
I'll ask a question for
There's-
socks. Out of curiosity, actually, on a genuine note.
Yeah.
At the risk of asking the silliest question.
No.
Do you know where the name for the open source actually came from? 'Cause
Yeah,
I
for
thought it was
Quarkus.
quite hilarious when I first saw it.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
do you
a
know where
quark-
that
yeah.
was sourced from?
I don't know the details, but does anybody know what a quark is?
Smallest amount of atoms in the universe.
What he said. So that's quark and then us being us developers. That's how we came up.
Subatomic, I guess. So
Yeah, subatomic.
that's where the name.
I actually had a slide that used to explain that, but I thought by now everybody knows quark, so I took out the slide.
What's the stupid question?
I didn't know. I know where it came from. I just guessed. Right?
Yeah.
I know, I should know.
That's why it says subatomic.
Yeah, subatomic.
Ah, it's all making sense now.
Maybe one more question, just out of curiosity. Was there any qualitative research on how much improvement Quarkus development workflow adds?
Not by Red Hat, but you probably, if you go to quarkus.io, you'll find we've got a lot of user stories on there, and there's so if you go to quarkus.io, there's a blog. I should probably spell it correctly. Yeah. Yeah. Ah. So there's a part of the blog that you could probably filter and find user stories where there's actual users that used it and will tell you, tell them their experience. We also have Quarkus Insights. If anybody has seen that before, it's a weekly, I think, YouTube series where every week there's a feature on. I was actually on this week, Monday. I gave an update on what we did in GraphQL. But typically in that insights, there will either be introducing a new extension or showing how extension work or a user story. And there was definitely more than one where people that switched to Quarkus told the experience, right? Not only from the developer's point of view, how quickly they develop, how much more they enjoy life, but also, how much they save on the cloud and so on. So go watch those. It's quite interesting. Yeah, you had another question?
Probably with the keyring.
Yeah, something. Yeah. I need to get rid of all of these things.
I was just curious about performance, like so obviously the native startup, native compilation is a real fast startup, it's on, but and you sort of touched on it earlier, but yeah, how does that impact just throughput?
Yes, so that's also a good question. The JVM mode, I don't know if I've
we'll sort of get the reading from, I think we interrupted before we.
Yeah, so the JVM mode actually performs better than the native mode. Java is kind of optimized for performance. And then when you build a monolith and you only install the one, then you give it 16 gig of memory and you just say, handle the load. Right. In the new world, if you want more load, you spin up more containers. And if the load goes down, you shut them down. So your one application doesn't have to handle a lot of load, because if you want more load, you spin up more containers. That's how you handle load in the new world. So that's why it doesn't really matter that the native doesn't. It's not like it's bad. It's just the JVM just outperforms it. But it's still good. And if you move, you can do other things. Move to reactive. Then you'll take a lot of load before it becomes an issue.
JVM outperforms because it has a deep compilation inside, which is kind of you get statistics during runtime and all the optimize all the plot methods and
If you answer a question, you get.
What's the license?
Quarkus is open source. Like everything else that Red Hat does, it's open source. And even the stuff that we want to buy support for, you buy a subscription, you never buy a license.
It's included in some of the subscriptions we were talking about earlier, and I think something another question. But it is included in some of these subscriptions.
Question. So,
Yeah.
Given that assume that the framework relies heavily on reflections, there is a way where we can stop the reflection. I think there is a way where we can, because once you use reflections, there is a way you can read the private variables also, right?
Yeah.
So you have a way, I forgot how, but there is a way where you can actually stop each reflection. If you do that, will the hot compile work?
Yeah, I didn't know you can do that.
I've just read in the Joshua Box book.
Oh, is it?
He has written that, there's a way.
That's quite interesting. I don't know. But like I said, we use that library, Jandex, and we built up a model beforehand. So we do know, we take away most of the reflection. So except if you are doing reflection, your code, all the code in the extensions, REST easy, JPA, they all do reflection. But we remove it before we run. And we've got a bytecode recorded as well. So we actually write class files. We don't write source files and then compile them. We write direct class files.
So it's just a matter of like in comparison to Spring, it's just when you read that reflection and do your model, right?
Yeah.
In Spring, you do your runtime, generate your runtime classes, instances of that. But
which is why we so quick.
yeah.
Any more questions?
I already have
There's a keyring and there's a
keyring and a bool.
Just on the guide, so most of the guides are targeted for people who like already know, let's say, the framework, the underlying framework, so like first easy, so the guide will just say, this is how you write.
Yeah.
But it assumes Because it's kind of personal. But it also was hard work because we kind of experimented onboarding like many Java developers into it. So rather like if you're comparing to like Spring or MicroProfile, you just point them out the documentation and they can
help themselves.
Right. With
Yeah.
Quarkus, you assume
And we
it's not
actually,
like an optimization. You already know all the frameworks, MicroProfile, JSR, and everything.
Yeah.
And you're just coming.
that's what happens when the same people that write the extensions write the documentation. So, and we've got this feedback already. So if it's not already on, in the next few months, there'll be brand new documentation that targets specifically that. A new developer that hasn't heard of Jax.rs before. The old ones will still be there, but we have, as we speak, people working. Professional documentation writers, not a Java developer that. So that should be up soon. Yeah. I don't know exactly when, I just follow every now and then I get a message.
Sounds like a shit, but can you attach it because they're actually quite big?
Yeah. Normal 5005 or whatever normal port is. Yeah, it starts it up by default in dev mode. And it is now.
Question for Bouncy ball, bouncy red ball.
We get
You're a cat or?
Yeah, just what sort of adoption you're seeing, like to the marketing people around Melbourne that you might see them using successfully.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, Quarkus is now about 3 years old, and 2 of those years was COVID. So it was quite hard to get the message out. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago in Portugal, and I was amazed at how many people knew Quarkus, started playing with it. So
This is a similar stuff, started playing.
Yeah.
And then it looks very promising. But so we would never start recommending it to a client.
Yes.
It's good to do.
I think now with things starting up, user groups starting up again, conferences starting up, we will get the word out. I think we're actually quite ready for it now. 2 years ago, probably it will be, this is interesting. Now this is usable. This is, you can, and we have clients using it in production. Like I said, we have user stories. I'm not too sure what the adoption rate is.
Yeah, and just those case studies are helpful because you don't want to, if it's an amazing bit of tech, you don't want to be the only person using it.
Yeah. Like I said, the good news is that Red Hat is eating its own dog food. We're not doing it just for the clients. We are using it. We are our own client. Our biggest client is Apache Camel. Those guys wrote extensions for all the, I don't know if you know Camel, but you can do anything with Camel. And all of those has been extensions. The guy from Camel actually does a talk on how to do extensions because he knows how to do extensions. So you'll find it Peter Palanga.
So the good thing about that though is we're happy to do a workshop.
Yeah.
If you have an interest, if your organization has an interest, reach out. We'll do a workshop, we'll do some demos, we'll actually hold your hand a bit, with some MVP type projects or whatever. You're not alone.
You say it's open source, right?
Yeah.
I think we need to show some love to our non-Java folks here. They've been sitting and trying to figure out what's going on. And our programmer joke. They deserve some.
So how does Red Hat make profit out of it?
What's the business model for this one?
The same as, so actually I want Martin to do this.
The sales question.
Yeah.
I've got a sales question for you.
Sales question. All right.
So, given it's open source, what's the main business model for this?
Yeah, so this is actually very interesting, right? So Red Hat doesn't sell open source. We don't, right? So what we do is we actually participate in and contribute to a lot of the upstream projects to get the code out there. We actually support a lot of those financially as well, not just from a code perspective. But then we work with those communities to create a distribution. And the distribution is then something that we know we can support. It is secure, it's enterprise grade, and that is the distribution we then take to customers. So customers, when they buy a Red Hat subscription, what they're doing is they're buying they're buying the right to contact Red Hat for support for upgrades, extended support. You know, we support our subscriptions for 10 years. Right, so if your subscription lapses, it's still open source, so you continue running. We don't stop you. It's not like a typical software vendor. So the Red Hat model is about the subscription model where you're subscribing to training, support, services, learning, extended support, hardening, patches as well. So if any patches come out from the community on that particular project, we'll go and we'll QA them to make sure that they are actually suitable for enterprise and enterprise consumption. You know, we've got an entire security team that looks at what the communities are doing, make sure we bring that into a hardened distribution.
And you might, if you look at the release frequency of Quarkus, I think we release monthly. So every month there's a new Quarkus version out. There's a new one coming out. The one that I've demoed is actually not out yet. It's 2.10. It's a month old. The 2.9 version is 1 month old. And we might maintain 2.9 for the next month, but then we move on. So if you're stuck on 2.8, you can't upgrade every month necessarily, your framework. You've got your own code. You suddenly sit at a version which is not going to receive any back patches. And if that's a concern to you, then you can subscribe. The way in which I usually answer this question is, if you want to be a citizen of open source, you have a few options. You can contribute, right? So if that's what you want, you can contribute back into Quarkus or whatever open source you do, and that's the way in which you pay your part. Or you can say, I'll let Red Hat contribute on my behalf. I'll pay a subscription, and Red Hat will contribute on my behalf. But now I have a voice in the community, because that's what you want. If something is broken, you need a voice in the community. If you have Red Hat, you tell us, listen, this is broken, we'll fix it immediately. If you just somebody, then we might fix it or we might not. Then now the priority is up to how we want it. Any more questions? Any more pizza?
There is more pizza. There is more pizza.
Run a bit of a giveaway, so.
Oh,
if you
yeah.
don't mind,
You-
I
you-
might just
yeah.
steal a seat from you for a second and just introduce myself. Hi, everybody. My name's Nat, or Natalie. Some of you actually know me already, which is kind of cool. And some of you I've just met, but for those of you who don't, I'm Natalie. I work at an agency recruitment firm called Circo Recruitment. I am running a little giveaway tonight. I made a little video and posted it up, and I've had a few entries, so I've got the name of the winner here. But before I do that, I just want to say, if you're interested in looking for a new position, feel free to come up to me at any time, even if you are interested in just creating a connection so that later on down the track when you are looking, you have a friendly face to turn to and say hi to and potentially have a chat to. Always down to just have a little bit of a chat, even if it's just for later on. We've got lots of roles all the way through from mid all the way through to senior and tech lead roles, fintech, banking, all the way through to retail and utilities as well. So I've got a lot going on at the moment. Sorry. Well, that's one of the reasons why I came tonight. I was interested to know what the trends would be in the future and see, you know, I'll be able to say to clients, you know, a few years in the future when everyone's starting to use Quarkus, oh, I went to the, you know, the introduction to Quarkus with Phillip.
What does it mean?
Oh, and then I'm going to really glaze over. I'm good, but I'm not that good. Yeah, I'll put it back on them. But yeah, look, I'm going to announce the winner of tonight. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on. Keen to connect with a few of you guys afterwards. So the winner is none other than Ubaid. I think he was kind of expecting it.
Get some prizes.
Get
to
some
the
prizes.
winner.
Yeah, he did. I think he was sucking up a little bit. Thanks for letting me steal the stage. Fantastic talk as well.
I guess. Yep. All right. Yeah. Thank you for coming tonight. Wanna say something, Daniel?
No, just
Yes,
I'm
still.
very thankful for speaker Phillip. So it was he who reached out to us. We are very grateful. Usually we have Zoom meetups and we are too cozy to come out of our study rooms. but it's good that we had not even the support for the great session like Quarkus, but also the sponsoring of the venue and amazing food, not Domino's. Yeah, it was a really Italian food, a really good one. And also Circuit to also kind of spread our messages across LinkedIn. Also, probably a big round of applause to the speaker, first of all. So, to all my co-organizers and all who's kind of behind the scenes, some of whom couldn't make it tonight, but yeah, and special thanks to everyone, because this was the first session after a big lockdown, and we had probably a house full session. So a round of applause to every one of you.
Yeah, thank you. Well done.
We hope that we'll see you again in person next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hey man, amazing. Thank you. Did you stop the recording or?
Oh crap!
I just have to click stop recording.
I shut down. I forgot about it.
So it's
It should have